Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. If you're listening to this podcast right about now when this thing's coming out, I should be headed from Vegas to Irwindale Dragstrip to meet up with the Hot Rod Power Tour West 2023. That's what I've got going on this weekend, so I'm excited about that. I'm going to be doing a lot of video and documenting that whole experience so I can share that with you guys on the podcast. I've seen a couple people do it before, and, being a VW guy, I've always been reluctant, like, I wonder if they let a VW on there. And then, I started looking at it, and I thought, oh, man, what the heck? I'm going on it, and I don't care. So my buddy and I are leaving this morning. By the time you hear this, we're on the road, and we're going to be headed to start the Power Tour West, and it goes from Irwindale, California, and then it comes back to Las Vegas. And then from Las Vegas, it goes to Pomona. So it's a car show, autocross, drag racing, all that stuff. And I've entered the event. It's about $200 to enter for one car, two people. You get passes, a goodie bag, and some stuff like that. But it's more like a rolling car show that goes from drag strip to drag strip. So I'm looking forward to it. It's kind of unique that I'm going to be leaving Vegas to go to Irwindale to come back to Vegas. But I want to do the long haul, so we're driving there. I was contemplating towing my bus down and leaving a trailer there for Sunday night. So when I'm tired on Sunday, I don't have to drive the bus back, because the bus is fun. Don't get me wrong, but that many hours in the bus, 3 hours there, 3 hours back, 3 more hours there, 3 more hours back. So that's 12 hours in the bus, a nice needed break after that. But we'll go ahead and long haul the thing all the way, and we'll see. Looking forward to this, hanging out with my buddy this weekend and getting ready to go do that. Wife bailed out on me last minute, so what can you do? It didn't look fun for her. She's usually all on board for this kind of stuff, but this one's a little bit of a grind, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the experience and see what it's like, and if there's anything that I can take away from it and add to the event that we do here in Las Vegas one crazy weekend. So I'm looking forward to it. I wish the bus was blistering fast and had the turbo installed and all that stuff, but maybe next year or maybe later on, and I can grab a power tour on the Midwest, because I think driving in a different location, is much more exciting than the same roads that I travel on a constant basis. So that's where I'm at this weekend. So keep your eyes peeled on Instagram, Facebook, and all that stuff, and I'll try to share as much as I can as I'm going through, but don't doubt I will have a video when the whole weekend is done. I'll document the whole thing, and we'll put that experience together. Other thing that I've got coming out that I haven't kind of put a little clip out, I'll put a little 2-minute clip out about shipping my Type 34 Ghia to Andy Finch over there. Andy the Paint, if you follow him, Spike's Vintage Restorations in the UK. So the Type 34 Ghia, I think it's en route. I'll find out soon enough, but we're going to be documenting that whole process, getting that car done. I think I may have mentioned it before, a little blurb before, but we'll do a little detail talk about what's going to be taking place with that. Custom wheels I'm having made for it and some other things. But yeah, this is going to be a good weekend. And this podcast is a great podcast to listen to if you're budget minded and are looking to get some performance without breaking the bank. Jeff Lain with Kaddie Shack is on this week's podcast. And we go into the history of how Caddyshack got started, talk about their, how they came to be, and get into their drag car that they've had for years, that they drive all the drag races and race it. And it's a street eliminator car. Pretty cool. It's a cool story. And the Kadron Cadrons, however you want to pronounce it, is a, Brazilian Solex carburetor that's made by Brazil in Brazil. Haven't done a deep dive on the history. We get a little bit of the history with Jeff on here, but maybe we'll do a super deep dive into kind of getting a little history on that company if I can maybe put some of those things together in the future. But this week's podcast is for those guys that are looking to squeeze a little bit of performance out, breaking the bank. You can usually find a set of Cadrons at your local swap meet. Usually they go pretty cheap if you're not in Southern California. And they're definitely a great way to buck up some performance in your car and keep it budget minded. And they're pretty reliable. Once they're in and they're dialed in, they're pretty solid. I know I've had them on a couple daily drivers of mine, and you just beat them up and keep moving. So this is what this week's podcast is about. So I'm excited to bring this to you, because I know a lot of you guys listen, you're tinkering your garage. You might have a 1600, 1776 single carb on there, or you might have some dual Webbers that are giving you a hard time, the caddies are pretty easy. And if you want to go check out a cool website, go to Kaddie Shack's website. They've got tons and tons of technical articles. He's got a link to his YouTube channel. He's got lots of cool technical videos on how to do mods of the carbs and, you know, getting things tuned and that type of stuff. So lots of DIY stuff on this week's podcast. So I'm excited to bring that to you. And don't forget, guys, do me a favor. If you love this podcast, share the podcast. I can't express to you how much it means to me when you guys share the podcast with your friends, because your friends are the ones that listen. They're the hardcore VW people, just like you, and they subscribe, they come along, and they share it with their friends. So let's keep growing the podcast. It's growing little by little. It's the biggest Volkswagen podcast that's out there, but it could always be a little bit bigger. Let's blow this thing up. You guys, me, together. Share it with your friends that love to get the history and the details behind the VW scene. Now, I did want to give a shout out to my guy, Jason Cardenas, and he's out of Hawthorne, Nevada. Jason hooked me up, man, sent me a Christmas gift. I appreciate it. He cut me some magnets for the back of the double cab and the back of the Bull Run bus. And these are magnets that look like the Octoon or the Caution logos that typically go on there, but they're all about Let's Talk Dubs. So I appreciate you for shooting those down to me, Jason, man. Merry Christmas to you too. And hopefully if you guys need any of this stuff, hit him up, Jason Cardenas. He's been doing these for a long time. He sent me a note here, says, thanks for the entertainment on the podcast. Love all the interviews and knowledge it's provided. I've been doing the custom magnets for years, and I wanted to hook you up. Single, double cab, and bus are enclosed. He's going to be with the Team Amigo camp at Buses by the Bridge this year, making them on site. So they're also going to be doing a bus event coming up at Walker Lake in May. So as soon as he gets me information on that, I'll pass it on to you guys. If you guys are up in that Hawthorne, Reno area, maybe if time permits and schedule allows, we cruise up there and maybe meet up with them on their little camp out, maybe stop in for a day or whatever. That would be cool. But definitely wanted to appreciate Jason for sending those magnets, man. I'm stoked that, I just really appreciate when, you guys create something and send it to me. We had that with Mr. Dan with the artwork, man. Super dope homie, hooked it up. And I love when we create and share with each other, man, because it might not look like it, but I create these podcasts and put them out there for you guys to enjoy, because it'd be selfish for me to get all this information to myself and nothing would come to value from it other than a great conversation and making a friend. But when I'm able to document these and put them out there on the podcast, it's enjoyable to a lot of people that get some information, some history, or a little technical knowledge you didn't know before. So I'm glad that you guys are doing that. And don't forget, you guys want a shot on the podcast, go to Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review, leave your name in the description, and I will make sure to mention you on the podcast. And just like that, you'll get a shout out like Mustafa 042. This is an awesome podcast, he says, for new VW people and the old heads. Love the content. Just so happened to buy a 67 Beetle right after the podcast dropped about 1 year only parts. Love the podcast and look forward to each one. Keep up the good work, man. Well, Mustafa, if that's your real name, next time put it in the description so I can give you a direct shout out. But I appreciate you for giving us a 5-star review. You guys are awesome, and I love giving back. Don't forget, guys, George is out there creating all these YouTube videos. So I'm gonna leave a link to George's podcast to George's how-to videos, not his podcast, but his YouTube channel. My bad. But George's got a YouTube channel, lots of cool technical how-to. George gets in the weeds when it comes to doing some of the technical stuff that he's doing, a lot of how-to videos. He just did an IRS conversion on his bus. Super rad. Wheels are standing straight up. So go follow George's YouTube channel. Go subscribe today. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, put tons of comments, nonsense comments. Be like, we're commenting because Bill told us to troll you. But George is the man, and he's doing a lot of hard work, cranked out these videos. He's doing a weekly thing now, and he's getting a taste of what I deal with doing the podcast, because you make a commitment because you love the hobby, and then it becomes something you love to do. So go follow George. Also, you can check out my YouTube channel as well. I just dropped a video a little bit ago with some awful audio. Don't kill me, especially being an audio guy. I ran into Mecum, shot a video real quick. I thought maybe I'll come back another day and do it. Didn't make it back the next day, so I used the content that I had. Surprised at what this bus went through. If you haven't seen this video, I'll put a link to that video below as well as George's YouTube channel. Go check out this video. 21 window bus sold at Mecum, no reserve, $51,000. Fair shape, decent driver. A lot of little issues with it, but you can check out the details in the YouTube video that I have on my YouTube channel, which is separate from Let's Talk Dubs podcast audio. So let's get into it, guys. This week, I forgot to mention our sponsors, man. Don't forget to support VW Trends Magazine, a magazine for the people by the people. Go check them out. Get your issue today. Subscribe at vwtrendsmagazine.com. And also our friends over at Ross Wolf. High quality aftermarket parts for enthusiasts by enthusiasts. So go check them out today at Ross Wolf. So give our sponsors some support. And don't forget Eric, our guy Eric, Dub Dogs Book. Go check him out on Facebook. Search Dub Dogs Book. He's got a rad book, Volkswagens and People's Pets, that belong to those Volkswagens. So it's a pretty awesome book. Go check it out. And you can use a code to get a discount. That code would be LTD Podcast, all one word, LTD Podcast, for a discount on the Dub Dogs Book. So go check them out. Google search Dub Dogs Book or click the link in the description below. Well, now it's time to get into this week's podcast. So budget-minded performance, get your Cadrons, whatever you call them. Jeff Lain with Kaddie Shack on this week's podcast.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the bug like. So if you happen to see a good-looking Volkswagen, don't panic.
Okay, everybody. So on today's show, as we're always out there trying to find the stuff that you guys are into. I know a lot of you guys are out there are budget performance minded. You want to get some performance out of your car and trying to figure out the best way to do it. I know there's a lot of you guys that have asked me questions about performance carburetors, and I've got today on our podcast Jeff Lain, and he's with Kaddie Shack. He's out of Temple City, California, and he's been the guy for a long time that's kind of mainly been focused on the Kadrons, performance modifications, and all that kind of stuff. So, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate that, and hopefully we'll have a good time.
Hey, I'm glad to have you on because I got a million questions. But I know you're kind of the Kadron guy, but what I want to do is the way we always start the podcast is, what's your VW story and how did you get into Volkswagens?
Okay. Well, I guess we could go back a little ways. When I was a kid, my mom had a 69 Squareback, and my stepdad had a Baja Bug, and my stepdad actually owned a machine shop where he ground crankshafts.
Oh, really?
So I remember going over there on, when it's Washington's birthday or whatever day I had off of school, and I would go to the machine shop. And I remember, like, one of my earliest recollections, I think when I was like 6 years old, maybe, was seeing all these crankshafts lined up. I'm looking back, maybe 100, 150 of them all in a row, standing up on the floor. There's probably more than that. And there's these big crankshafts and there's these little crankshafts.
Yeah.
And I remember there were so many of the little ones. I remember asking, what are those? Oh, those are crankshafts for a Volkswagen. So it's kind of funny how I still remember that. I don't know who. It was called Carl's Automotive in Monrovia, California. I don't know. Maybe some old timer out there will remember who and what that really was. But that's like my earliest recollection of Volkswagens.
And he was doing specifically Volkswagens or all kinds of crankshafts?
No, he did all kinds. So there was mostly V8 stuff, but I just remembered like a line of just had to been at least 100 of them, and they were just standing up on ends on the floor in a big line waiting to get to the crank grinding machine. And I would stand and I'd watch grind crankshafts for like 5 minutes till I was bored, and then I wanted to go make paper airplanes or something.
Huh. And so, but having that as your stepdad, did you kind of have an opportunity to kind of mess with, mechanical stuff or build or mess with things at an early age?
I didn't really. I didn't. That was kind of a job for him, and I guess when he came home, we went fishing and did things that families do. But I mean, that's like, I guess, my earliest recollection of Volkswagen stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I know my mom drove one and he drove one, and and I eventually, when I became like 16, got my mom's car, and then here we are. Right?
So your first car was the squareback?
It was a 69 squareback. Yeah. The yellow one.
Nice. And
yeah.
And then at what point in the world do you decide to get into carburetors? Were you just naturally, like, was it a lack of resources that you had to kind of work on your own stuff, or you just were intrigued by it, or what was the driving factor that got you into kind of tinkering with the Volkswagens?
Well, I kind of left the house by mutual agreement when I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
And Dad said, "Hey, what is it going to take to get you out of the house?" And I said, like $300. Wallet, and he gave me $300, and I loaded everything I owned into the back of that Volkswagen Squareback, and I had it towed away, and it didn't run at the time. I had it towed to a buddy's house, and I lived there. And I guess, like a lot of us probably,
mm-hmm.
when you're 18 years old and you have a Volkswagen, you learn how to work on it because you don't have any other transportation.
And a 69 would have been fuel injected, right?
It was fuel injected. And yeah. And I remember, having a job, and I remember an old guy came in with a squareback, and it was a 69, and I was asking him about carburetors. And actually, I hadn't even thought of this story till right now. And he showed me he had these little baby Webers on his car, and told me he had a 1641, and that was a big motor, man.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I blew that car up, and I sold that car, and then, had a Super Beetle after that, and then, it's just how it is.
Yeah.
It's just from there. The Super Beetle was my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
and this is before everybody had, like, you just had a bug. You were classified in the bug groups, and then everybody started, like, it was an early bug or late bug or Super Beetle or flat windshield, and then you start learning all the differences, right?
Yeah, I remember you'd go and you'd open the magazines up, and you'd, oh man, this looks cool, I want to buy this, and every part in there said
doesn't fit on your car.
So yeah, that's, I guess we all kind of go through that. And man, it was a 70, what was that thing? 70, it was a 75.
Yeah.
And it was fuel injected, but actually I didn't have fuel injection in it. So that was,
I was going to say 75 is the first year for fuel injected Beetle.
Yeah. It was a purple. No, it was a black Super Beetle with like purple flames on the front, man. That was the coolest. And chromies.
Oh,
that was the coolest. Yeah, man.
And then
sunroof.
And how do you
interior?
And what color interior?
A velour interior.
Oh yeah, that I mean, this is the way of the 80s, right? It was like, go grab a set of Honda Prelude seats and bolt them in the car, cover everything in black velour, get a center console, lower the front, put some kind of chrome on the wheels, and you're dialed. Like, it was the easiest car to fix up and just have it look cool,
Dude, I wish I had that car today.
Yeah. I one day I will own a Super Beetle, and I would want a German look Super Beetle, but I definitely want a Super Beetle, because I think it would be interesting to drive side by side a stock Beetle, a Beam Beetle, and a McPherson Strut Beetle. I would imagine it'd be a world of difference in the performance as far as how they drive.
Yeah.
Now, how do you start getting into messing with carburetors and all that kind of stuff? You know, how does that all come about?
Oh man, we got to fast forward like a long time. I mean, I had a lot of Volkswagens, you know, between now and then. I don't know. I guess the Super Beetle, I don't know how I got Cadrons, but somehow I did. And I think I had them on my I did have them on my Super Beetle, because when I sold the car, I had to take the engine out of it because it wasn't smog legal. In order to sell it, I sold it with no engine. I put the engine in, I think, in my Baja Bug, or I don't know, one of the Volkswagens. You know how it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember where they got. I know I didn't get them new. I couldn't afford like $100 set of carburetors back then.
Right. And it was back in the days when we're all younger, right? We're all, the last thing we have is money for car stuff. So it's like, hey, you bought some parts, there's a couple pieces, you're collecting a manifold, you got a carburetor, and it's like you put together a set of dual carbs, man, and you're on cloud nine. I mean, it doesn't even matter. And you look back at stuff and you're like, man, they were junk, and it was like everything was mismatched and whatever. But it's like all your idea was, if I can put dual carbs in this thing, man, it'll turn this thing into a beast.
Exactly, and it did, and it sparked my interest in it all. Like, oh, man, I got a race car now, man.
Right, fastest thing from light to light.
Like Thursday, man. Thursday, you get lunchtime on your lunch break. You'd run down to 7-Eleven because the recycler came.
Yeah,
and you would open the recycler and you could go to the Volkswagen section and you could buy a car for $200 that somebody else's problem, or $500, or you could buy carburetors in there. You could buy hubcaps or whatever. I mean, it was like the Thursday deal, man. Right? You'd go get the recycler.
Oh yeah. Well, by that time I remember I would go, I think it'd be like Wednesday night late at like 1:00 in the morning when they would be delivering them for Thursday. And I'd go to the 7-Eleven and get them and try to jump on. I mean, I can't even tell you how many sets of Porsche alloys and stuff and that's here in Vegas, and this is back when the recycler came here, like in the early 90s. So for us, it was like, dude, no way, the recycler, because it was free to place an ad. And so everybody would just post stuff on there. And then it was, I can't tell you how many deals I got. And then shortly after that, the internet explodes and everything goes online. But, so with the dual carbs, like, so are you, throughout your hobby of owning Volkswagens, are you doing your own engine work and that kind of stuff? Or are buddies asking you for help? I mean, how do you get to the point where you start messing with the Cadrons?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as a Volkswagen owner, you kind of gravitate toward people with similar illnesses,
Right.
And you find I had a buddy Jeremy and a buddy Dave, and Dave had a Volkswagen, Jeremy had a Volkswagen, and Jeremy called me up, hey dude, I need to, can you help me tow my car because it's broken? And so you'd go help him and he'd help you, and Friday night you'd go get beer and work on somebody's Volkswagen, and it was just life. And dude, we didn't know what we're doing, and you blew something, you just fixed it, and I didn't have any money. I had just, a couple of hand tools, and, I look at the stuff that I did back then, and we all do, and we go, wow, man. But somehow it was, you put that tranny in and get to work on Monday and whatever you had to do.
Right.
Or buy some car out of the recycler. And I remember doing that with a couple of buddies would go in and we'd pitch in $100. We'd buy a car. We'd strip the car of everything we wanted, put all the crap from our cars on that car, and we'd sell it the next week.
Oh yeah.
Back, and we just get a bunch of free parts.
Yeah. I remember I bought a 67 Beetle out of some lady's backyard. Had been in an accident for like her son 25 years prior. She didn't know what happened to the title to it. So I was like, well, no, in fact, I had the title for it because I sold the title separately, and I took it to Pomona. It was a yellow 67 Beetle, and I just cut it up right there in a spot. I towed it down there, and I was like, what do you want? Front apron, $50, cut it off. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I've been doing that with the bus like 10 years ago.
Yeah. And it's like, I bought the car for $100. And I think by the time I was done at the end of the swap meet, I'd made like $800 just parting the thing out right there. And it was,
Right.
but what's interesting is, the people that gravitate to Volkswagens are usually people from not a lot of means, right? And they're there because it's like, well, if your parents make good money and you get a good job as a busboy or something like that, you can afford a payment and you go get a mini truck. Or if you still want to be cool, you go buy $100 Volkswagen, slam it over the weekend, primer it, and show up at school with some Porsche nipple hubcaps, and you got a custom car,
Right.
So, I mean, it's interesting that I find out that the VW people out of necessity just have a tendency to be so resourceful and just will try to make anything work. And like you were saying earlier, I remember nights where it was like, okay, tonight we're going to drop my motor, paint all the engine tins since I got to do a new clutch. We'll just paint all the engine tins, do all that stuff, but I got to get it back to work by 10:30, back in the car by 10:30 because I got to go to work tomorrow. And
Right.
It's like all these things you didn't realize at the time are like these hero mechanic things to do overnight. But it was like if you had a friend that had like a garage you could work in, that was a double bonus because usually most of it was done in the driveway.
Oh, on the street, in the driveway. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then like, when do you discover, like, because tuning carbs in and of itself is kind of a little bit of an art, after a while. Like it takes a little bit of having the patience to realize the synchronicity of carburetors in general, just getting them sync the same. Cause that's, my brother George has got that shop, The Wagon, and he does he's really, really good at tuning carbs and stuff like that. And it's just like, he can hear a car drive it. It makes him insane. And he's like, he just hears it rev and he's like, yeah, it's really annoying. And there's different linkages and all the stuff that throw everything out of whack, but it really requires a little bit of patience to be able to sit there with a set of carburetors and just dialing the linkage to begin with,
Well, yeah, I guess I agree with that, but I wasn't one of the smart guys, so I had Webers. I bought my Baja, my 1957 oval window, which I did in 1991. I still have that car. It's about 40 feet from me right now.
Wow.
And that was like, I was going to build a car. There's no internet, there's no whatever. You have a book and whatever friend. And, I went down to Johnny Speed and Chrome.
Mm-hmm.
And I saved up my Christmas money or whatever it was, all this time. And I bought a roll cage kit, man. And I came back and all the pre-bent pieces. And I laid them all out. And I'm like, okay, this will go here, this will go there. And then like the next weekend, I bought a roll cage kit of all pre-bent pieces. And the weekend after that, I bought a pre-bent roll cage kit of all the pre-bent pieces and a rear bumper. And with all those pre-bent pieces and no help and no internet, I built a roll cage.
Oh, really?
Because I didn't have a bender. So I just made the piece that was going to be the hoop. We'll cut this. We'll make that angle go through the firewall and tie in the front beam. And I'm just kind of a mad scientist, I guess.
Yeah.
And the cage is still together, dude, and it's still there. And I bought a bunch of straight pieces from the IPS, Industrial Pipe and Supply, or something like that.
Nice.
A bunch of straight, just mild steel 1.5-inch tubing, and I built all these things. And the bumper that I bought actually fits perfectly, when I cut it all up, and the curve in the bumper fits, those fiberglass buggy seats, rear seats.
Yeah.
So I was able to fit that all in, and it matched the contour of the rear bumper. So I welded little tabs onto that.
Oh, nice.
Dude, it's a Frankenstein deal, but it works, man. And I've never broken anything in that car other than manufactured parts, obviously. I guess that was a way of just doing things. I just like to work with my hands, and, I wasn't, the guy who got good grades and did doctor kind of studying stuff. I just did what I could.
Yeah.
And with what money I had, and it was cool. And so now I got to bust that thing out again. It needs an engine, and I need to get off my butt and build an engine for it and get it back out there. But it kind of became kind of a famous car.
Yeah.
You've probably seen it on the internet. Everybody that I ever show a picture to said, "Oh, I've seen that." And it's so I built all that and I did all this stuff, and I don't know. And then you put it aside for a couple of years, and then you come back to it, and you've probably been around this, and you're not like constantly working on it, but it's like the ocean, man. It's like high tide, low tide, I guess. The tide goes in, and your interest goes somewhere else, and then you do something else, and then you buy another car, and you buy a bus, or you buy this or that, or then you get tired. Man, I broke it. That's what happened. I broke it. My wife, I had to call my wife, and I was down by Disneyland and have her come get me, and then I had to go get the car and get it towed home, and the next day, and I'm like, dude, I can't drive this thing every day anymore. I break things in it, and I'm tired of it. And at that point, I just went out and bought a new car that Saturday, and then I just put this car in the garage for a while, and then I came back to it later, and I built it all up again and put like these 3x3 trailing arms on it, and the center line wheels and king shocks and all this big thing.
Yeah.
And then I finally had to say, it's all painted, it's all done, it's nice. It's like, this is like a really cool car to drive. And by then I was old enough and smart enough to know that you just don't go to the desert and something like that by yourself.
Right.
Am I rambling, dude?
No, exactly right. I mean, you got to bring some backup with you. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, what do I do now? So I got on this place called the Samba, and I'm like, all right, does anybody want to go? And everybody wants to talk about this and da-da-da-da-da. So I decided I'm going to start a Baja club.
Yeah.
We're going to call it SoCal Bajas. And so it's like, okay, we're going to do a SoCal Bajas run, and we're going to do this and that. And okay, there's all these people, they want to show up, and I went out and we go to do the first run and the first meet up here in the local mountains out here. And nobody showed up, and I just did it myself, and then I posted pictures of it. And everybody's like, oh man, I want to go. So somebody has pictures. So then we came back, we had a meeting, there was 4 of us. And then there was me and the 4 of us, we had a meeting, and we decided, hey, we're going to meet once a month. And then 4 of us turned into 6 of us and 8 of us. And now we started a website and had t-shirts, and now that thing is out of control, dude. There's it's SoCal Bajas. They have a big Facebook page. There's, I don't know, 1,000 members or something.
Really?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a big deal over here. There's people in Nevada in it.
Nice.
In Arizona, and we did these runs, and I have a t-shirt around here somewhere. I think we did like 38 runs in the first couple of years, and we made like a world tour t-shirts.
That's
listed
cool.
all the runs. We made these videos, and every time we'd make a video, we'd do a run, and more people would show up, and then you'd break things, and the whole deal was like you'd have 20 cars out there, or 25 cars, and then somebody break, everybody stops, everybody gets out their toolbox, and they start fixing everybody's cars. And hey, man, you got a fuel pump? Yeah, I got a fuel pump. Oh, okay, cool. You got a tie rod in. This guy broke this. And it was really, really fun, dude. It was really fun.
Yeah. And then from that and getting that stuff going and kind of working and creating and having a community coming together like that.
Right.
Where do you realize the potential of the Cadron carburetor?
Okay. So that's where it's all tying in. So sorry for
that. Yeah. No worries. This is what this is about. This is the long version.
So yeah, right. So we're like the Baja Club guys. We're like, hey man, somebody's like, let's go to the Classic together.
Mm-hmm.
Like let's go to the VW Classic. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm in, man. We'll all buzz down there, and we'll like show up the big dirty guys or whatever, and we'll go to the Classic, and we'll just hang out, and it was fun. And so I went in, and I didn't have any money, so I bought $300 from my teenage kid. And I said, hey, I'm going to go to Classic, and I might see something I want. So I go over there, and I see carburetors laying all around, to swap me, because you're always doing, whatever. And it's like,
right.
Oh, for these, $50. Okay, I'll take them. How much for these? It's $25. And so I ended up coming home with just a huge box of carburetors. And then, because I think I had the bus by then, and I had Cadrons on my. Oh no, I wanted to put Cadrons on my bus by then. So I ended up putting carburetors on my bus. From that I picked up at the swap meet. The guy's like, "Oh man, they come off a running car, right?" I'm like, "Oh, I'll put them on a bus." 1600 in that thing. It's hard to drive up the hill to Hunga over here. You don't go to work in that thing.
Right.
Like, give me power. I don't want to do wheelies in that thing or whatever, but we'll get some power in it. So I put the carbs on and started it up, and well, it didn't start up. Then I turned the key and turned the key and turned the key. I was like, man, what's going on? So I got out, I went, and there's like a 3-foot puddle of gasoline in my driveway.
Not good.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, dude. So, the carbs come off, and I put some gaskets in them. I will rebuild them, right? I put some gaskets in them. That'll fix them. So I took them out, and there was no floats inside the carburetors.
Oh, wow. So you're just pumping them full of fuel, and it's just coming right out.
Yeah. So, make a long story short, that I had to change the oil in that engine, and that engine didn't last long after that. It was the whole crankcase was like full of gasoline.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, there's got to be a better way. So I ended up fixing those and then doing whatever. I had to cut some linkage up to make some stupid shit work with that, and then it's just all this time, dude, and everybody calls still, man, and everybody we're running the swap meets. It's that same line, dude. They came off a running car, right?
Ran when parked. Yeah,
that bothers me, dude. It really bothers me because I got hosed, man, and it sucks, and I'm like, I guess a lot. I mean, I had a real job then,
Yeah.
I'd go to work, and then I'd come back, and I'd maybe fix some carburetors and like sell them on Samba or whatever. Our buddies of mine, hey, can you do this? And I'd learn and do and make mistakes and just learn. And I just figured there had to be a better way. I'm like, I just felt bad, and I felt like, man, maybe somebody could build carburetors, and so I started doing that for Volkswagen money, to support my addiction. So, and there's a lot of people that do that. I'm sure you run into those guys all the time.
Yeah.
That's damn industry.
That's half it's half the industry started because it was just a hobby for somebody, and they're like, wow, I didn't realize there was such a need for this. And especially when you're honest and reliable and dependable, you know what I mean? Like it's a big deal, because, and that's what happens. Like a guy like you who's looking to be treated fair doesn't get treated fair. And you're like, I ought to do something about this. You know?
And that's kind of how it happened. And then it just kept evolving. We still kept going and building for the Baja guys, and and then we're like, oh man, like we need these don't work as well off road. So like I'm like, I got an idea. We can fit the float pole. We could weld a piece over here, and then like let's try this out, and then let's try this out, and then the economy was, well, I don't know, whatever that was, all those 14 years ago when the economy tanked. And,
right. 08.
And I've been in the motorhome and the RV industry for 18 years at that point, and had a very stable job, and I was very happy, and that was going to be my career. And then I took like a 40% pay cut at my job, and then working on carburetors became a part of a job. I'd work 40 hours a week, and I'd come home and I'd work on carburetors, and I'd start selling them, and got a little more serious, and that's kind of how the transition went. And I was like, well, these, I like the Cadrons. I like those. They're simple carburetor, right? That's
they're real simple. They're real simple, and once you got them figured out, you're kind of
till they're not. And I ran into a lot of that till they're not. And it took, and I built me by now. I like, okay, well, I need a fixture that's going to hold this thing at this angle while I drill this hole. So I'd weld all these crazy contraptions together, and I still have them. We still use them. Yeah. For holding carburetors in a spot where we can get the drill press on, or we can get another piece in there, and it has the right angle of the thing, and you feed it, and it just kind of got more serious from there. And then eventually eventually I was laid off from my job, and I just was at a member of a car club that met down here at Tommy's called SDR, Stat DeRozan.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I wasn't a member. I was never fully jumped in, but it's a block from my house, and we were there every Friday night, and that's where I met Miguel. And so I got laid off, and I went in that Friday night, and I was like, "Hey, dudes, I got laid off. If anybody needs work on their car, I'll just, I'd be happy to work on it at the house." And I started working on Volkswagens, and that's kind of how it started, I guess.
And then you just, because, opportunity opened itself up and you thought, hey, I can make a living doing something else. And I really enjoy this. It's my hobby. And then as you start to pursue that and you see there's some viability, working out of your house is one thing. And then opening up a shop is something else. Right. So, how does, because that's a big step to take, because then it's getting serious, right? Now you're getting overhead attached with it. You got rent due every month. There's a whole thing there. So, you started slowly building up the workflow until like all of a sudden you're like, you know what, this is too much to do out of my garage.
Yeah, I guess it sort of happened like that. It was like, well, the bridge, the gap there, so at one point I had like 8 or 10 Volkswagens in my driveway at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife is a very lovely lady, and she's been very patient with me, and she understands me. We met in high school, we dated in high school. So, we go back a little ways. So she understands my faults more so than I do probably at this point. And we were, kind of working through it. It's just what you got to do. And I didn't want to get a real job. I just felt like I was let down by a career that I had pursued for so many years. And I figured, if I could do this in an economy that is really tanking, if the economy ever comes back, I might actually have a viable thing here. So Miguel was living here up the street at the time. So he would come over and he'd watch me build carburetors and do stuff during the day, and he'd just hang out, and he'd just, and finally I'm like, dude, just get a broom or do something, just, and so he and I kind of got married per se at that point.
Right. That's when you guys decided, hey, we can make a good team here doing this together.
And there's kids come in and out, and we, and we've had some employees and some things, but we kind of shared a like-minded vision of things, and we always wanted to do the right thing and not, and just be good people, man. It's just, and do something that was fun. And then let me tell you, at some point, your hobby becomes something you enjoy doing, becomes something you have to do. And that's the point that was hard. That's what made it really hard, because I'm a bad guy. I don't want to work on cars anymore for somebody else. And it's one thing when you're like out there in the middle of the night and you're cussing at your own car and screaming and you go inside, your wife says, "What's wrong?" And you go, "Oh, nothing, man. I had a great night."
Right.
And then throwing tools. Oh yeah, that's just part of the whole thing. But I guess at some point, I didn't want to work on the cars part anymore. And we were building carburetors still. They were starting to ship them in from all over the country. And I was getting carbs from Australia and Europe and stuff. And we're like, okay, well, we still worked on cars, I guess, over when we moved into the shop. But a buddy Brian of mine had come over too. And he'd come over every night after work. And hey, what do you guys do today? And we just hang out. It just kind of became a thing. It came a little town center of Volkswagens.
Right.
A little mecca. People in the neighborhood stop by. What you doing, dude? And Brian came over one day and he said, "Hey, Jeff, there's a shop that's got a roll-up door 100 yards down the street from your house. We need to go look at it. Like, write the phone number down. Let's call a realtor." I'm like, "Nah, dude, we can't do this. That's like a big step, like you say."
Right.
It's a step. And no lie, dude. Within a week we were in there.
And you're like, okay, I guess we're doing this, right?
Yeah. And we're like, we're going to try. then that's where we started. That's where we were, and we just moved out of that place.
Oh, really?
You know, years.
How long were you there?
We were at that building for like 10 years. I think we did it out of the house for a year and a half, 2 years.
Wow.
Actually, I did more than that before Miguel, but we were there 10 years.
That's insane. And then how does the name Kaddie Shack come about? I mean, in hindsight, it's obvious, but where does that come from?
Well, I was with a buddy of mine at Again, I think it was Rick QRP Rick. I don't remember who his last name is.
Uh-huh.
But we decided, he was another Baja guy, and we decided, hey, let's go out to the swap meet and we'll sell some stuff, because I had a bunch of stuff there by then, man. That is. You accumulate stuff, and like, let's go sell some stuff. And then I remember driving out there, with a whole load of Kadron carburetors, and people ask, well, that's the big question. You'll probably ask, it's probably on your agenda, is like, are they Kadrons, are they Cadrons, are they Cadrons?
Right.
So I just started calling them caddies. And then Rick and I were talking, and we were like, well, why don't you just be the Kaddie Shack? That sounds cool. Like, that's, people remember that.
Right.
Like, yeah, okay. So we're the Caddyshack, and that's how that all came about.
And now, how much do you think the Samba helped launch your business just because of that community online?
I think a lot, really.
I mean
it's an up and coming thing, and at that point, it still is a big deal. I was on there as a hobby. The Facebook stuff wasn't what it is today, and the social media wasn't there, and there was a place where we gather. It was a your little church or whatever of Volkswagens,
Yeah. I mean, I think it definitely, I remember going on Vintage Bus back in the day and stuff like that. And you go on some of these sites and it's like, all of a sudden it just changes everything. It makes the world super small. And now you can see what's happening, in the UK, in whatever. So if you're going down the rabbit hole of what people are doing with this particular the set of wheels that you think is so rare, then you start going down the rabbit hole and you find out, well, there might be rare where you are at, but everywhere over here, they've got 40 million sets of them, but it's the cool thing here, or it's something different over there, So I think the Samba, and I've been chasing Everett for a long time, trying to get him to come on the podcast, because I think it's such a neat story to be told of, how much I think the Samba and the timing of the generation, and us being the generation of people that are actually, internet savvy enough to where forum boards were our thing, because forum boards have kind of died a little bit. And it's become more Facebook groups and all that kind of stuff. But I think
Baja's had a forum board too. We've got pretty big stuff too, but it became something else. Like you say.
And I think that timing with the generation and all that stuff has just propelled it to be another one of those things that just made Volkswagens now, as we're all kind of getting a little bit older, as popular as they are, and making it to be such a legitimate thing. And so many businesses have been started because a guy wants to rebuild whatever, taillights, speedos, windshield wiper motors, you name it.
Right. Someone
wants to rebuild it. Next thing you know, the guy's busier than he can handle, and he thought it was just going to be a weekend job, and all of a sudden he's got, it's like, I got to raise my price or something because I'm too busy, because everybody's just throwing everything at me. So now with the process of starting to do so let's break down the Cadron a little bit, or Cadron, or Caddy, or however you want to call it, because I mean, do you know the history of the carburetor, like where it comes from, how it, I mean, were they manufactured for Volkswagens, for a particular model of Volkswagen, or was this always an aftermarket carburetor for a couple different cars that was adapted for a Volkswagen?
Well, what I can gather and what I know from what I've researched and whatever, and it may be wrong or may be right or whatever, I don't know. But they were a carburetor that they were putting on Jeeps and like other engines in Brazil, and in the late 60s. And there's a company down in Brazil that would buy Volkswagen chassis, and they would build their own car on that chassis, and it was called Puma, which I'm sure you've heard of.
Yep, I've owned one.
You've owned one. So,
Yeah.
and then Puma decided that it was a little sports car and they wanted to make them faster. So they built their own manifolds and they adapted this Jeep carburetor to it and made their linkage for it. And then I think, from what I'm gathering, Kadron company, who was a distributor, they were kind of like the MP of Brazilian parts back then. They sold exhaust, they sold window winders. You've heard of exhaust, but
Oh yeah, I have an exhaust on my Ghia TC. It has a Cadron exhaust on there.
They've had wheels. They built. They had a whole catalog. I have one of those catalogs in my little Cadron museum.
Oh really?
Of collectible things. Yeah. Tom, the owner of Scat, gave me a catalog from back in the day from them. See, it's like a whole catalog of things, like, wow, they have all the seats and whatever else. And they actually build cars also. And I don't know if you know that or not, but Kadron actually built cars. It was a fiberglass car. It was a weird Frankenstein looking, Myers-Manx kind of looking thing on maybe Myers-Manx on whatever Charles Manson drugs that he took.
Right.
It was weird, but you can find them out there. There's pictures on the internet. And then, so the Cadron, Kaddie, whoever company, started importing those or exporting them out of Brazil and importing them into the United States. And then they kind of caught on. And when I was a kid, you'd go and you'd bust out your high VWs and you'd see Webers for $400 and you'd see Cadrons for $129 or $159. And you were like, man, okay, I could do that,
Yeah.
And they were attainable, they were attainable.
Yeah. It's like an entry level set of dual carburetors. And, they say mathematically the VW engine is 1.5 times under carbureted, and it kind of stands to reason, right? They want to build a car that the engine's overbuilt and it's efficient on the intake side and efficient enough where you can floorboard the throttle and not blow the motor up. You know what I mean?
Right. And it'll run in North Africa and it'll run in Alaska.
Right.
And, Switzerland or whatever, Yeah. So it was over designed. I don't know, underpowered. Yeah. So we all wanted to go faster. And when you're a kid, you want to go faster. And when you're an old fat guy, you want to go faster. And it's just funner being faster.
Right.
Right.
No, without question. And if your barrier to entry becomes really affordable because now they've become so inexpensive, or you can just pick up you go to the swap meet and buy a set for $50 because some guy's like, these old junky carburetors because they made them for single ports as well. Didn't they? Single ports and dual ports.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
You could wake up a 1600 single port like nobody's business with a set of Cadrons on there. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and we've done all this dyno tech. Later on, we invested in dyno and all this testing. We built all sorts of crazy stuff and did all sorts of neat things. Experimented and failed a lot, and succeeded a lot. And on our dyno, we have before and after tests of putting them on a stock 1600, and realistically, you get 50% more horsepower. It's like putting 2 more cylinders on that engine.
Really? And so on a 1600 dyno, what's a typical number that you would see like on a dyno from a stock motor?
On our website somewhere. But if I remember right, we were at like 39 horsepower on the dyno with a stock 1600 stock exhaust, and ended up when you end up putting carbs in just a whatever quiet pack or a Stinger or whatever on it, we ended up at 60. I remember 60, and then we ended up at 63 horsepower when we put 1.4 rockers on it
with a 1600.
It's stock. Old tire. There's pictures of it on the website. They're old tire, and actually that was just one of them. We did several of them.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So getting the motor to breathe, obviously it's an air pump, right? More air in, more air out, more performance.
Right.
And so being able to do that. Now when you started, so you start tinkering them to figure out these are pretty easy to tune. I get them dialed in. What's your first step? Let's say like somebody says, what kind of stuff does Caddyshack do for my carbs? And what different levels, is there different levels of stages of performance modifications for these carburetors?
Well, yeah, I mean, we build them for everything. So, I mean, I built them for 1300s. I've built them for 2332s. Displacement is one piece of the calculation. I mean, you're looking at compression ratio. You're looking at what size exhaust you're running, whether you're going to run off-road or on-road. You're looking at, whether it's a show car. We have different air clean. I think we have 13 or 15 different air cleaner setups that we can do. Is it your basic 1776 110 cam? Is it maybe a mini stroker 1968 cc with some CB heads or some ported heads or something on it, 10-to-1 compression? I mean, we can match anything and make it run pretty well.
And then for people, let's say somebody's listening to this podcast that like there's a set sitting in their garage somewhere and they're like, I'm listening to this podcast, man. I'm going to call Jeff up and find out like, okay, what are my things to do? I mean, is there a couple steps you can walk them through and say, okay, start A here, B there, C there. And of course he's probably got a 1600 or a 1776, doesn't know what cam it is, just a street motor running a single carb, he's going to switch it over. So are there like, what are some of the mods, let's say, that you would do with them that like, okay, if you can't do any mods, at least do this to the carburetors? What's that?
Do you want to run, or do you want to spit gas out in your driveway like I did?
Yeah. What did you say? Set the floats?
Send them in.
Oh, send them in.
If you can't do anything else, send them in.
Yeah. And so
I mean, if you're going to run them. If you want to take your chances on it, that's fine too. And we're going to help you through that. But when you call us and you say, hey, it's doing this, and we're going to say, well, we haven't seen the carbs. We don't know, bro, there's like hundreds of things with these carburetors, all these different generations. They still make these at Brosol, the factory down there in Brazil, the same place that's always made them. They haven't gotten any better. In some ways they've gotten worse. In some ways they're the same. But there's generations that have a certain accelerator pump tube that tends to crack or spit out the end, or there's certain generations that have this casting flaw that we need to drill an extra hole and put a plug in it, a 1/16 inch plug, so it blocks a vacuum passage that does this, so if it backfires it doesn't there's throttle body bushings are different. I mean, the thing about these that has been known since the beginning of time is that throttle body bushings wear out, and you could take a brand new out of the box, and we do that every single day. And the throttle body bushings are pretty bad in most of them.
Just a lot of slop because of the manufacturing process is just like.
They've changed the design of the throttle body bushing several times. They had this 1.5 millimeter wide design in the early ones, and they took certain tooling to get that one out and machine it out. And then they went to a later design after we started using our 10 millimeter wide ones. It looked like the factory did that, but then they're putting them in loose. And then now, dude, in the last month, they're using plastic bushings in these things.
Now, are those the ones that are being sold by Impy now? Or are those just bar sold through Impy?
Yeah, Impy made a deal with them back in the day, where they were exclusive. So you can't get these, nobody can get them inside the country without smuggling them in, other than going through Impy. So they have an exclusive deal with Brosol that Dan negotiated way back at the beginning of time. So when Cadron or whoever went out of business, Impy jumped on that, and that's who you got to get them through. So Impy has since knocked off the carburetor, and we tried those too, and we've got videos on that. And hey, I'm up for that. If there's new technology, they redesigned them and redid them, and they knocked them off. They made them in China, and I can say from testing that we were going to work on those for. We made a legitimate try, and we couldn't get them really to run the way we were happy with them. They would run, but you didn't want to be on the other end of the phone call with a customer.
So in your opinion, an original set of the Solex Cadrons is the way to go?
Yeah, and that's what we'll work on. I won't work on anything else, you know.
Because you guys, you looked at the MP and said, oh, we can probably do our mods to this and that, and they've changed them just enough to where it's just.
We've done a lot of that, and I had them in my car for a while. I mean, we tested them, we took them to the track, we did back-to-back tests on it, we did all sorts of things. They have different threads. We had to drill stuff out and retap stuff and da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
And after all that and all the jetting and the different things that we would do to these, we just could never get the flat spot out of them. So we're just like I'm done, you know. So
yeah,
it's just I don't need to work on something that we just don't feel is going to work as battery was. And there's probably plenty of people out there that get them to work okay. But man, I'm on the phone on the other end of that phone with people a lot that bought them, and they're like, hey, you know, I bought these for $300 or whatever they are.
And you're getting ear raped for half an hour. And you're like, hey man, I really got to work. I really want to help you, but I got like, well, yeah, you know what I mean?
You want to help the guy, but you're like, I mean, and I just upfront when honest with them, like, hey, look, I'll give you what I got. But you got to understand that I don't know how to do them either. So
yeah,
whatever I got to give you is, here it is.
Which by the way, your website, which is, what is it? Caddyshack.com.
Yeah. Caddyshack.com.
It's got a ton of free information on there. For like people that want to tune their stuff and do that. I mean, there's a lot, you got a lot of technical videos on there. I mean, it's huge. I mean, there's a lot of insight for someone that's looking to learn, especially somebody that's listen to this podcast somewhere and, you know, wants to figure out, like they've got a good running set and they want to kind of tune them in a little bit or whatever. There's a lot of, I mean, you got a lot of stuff there.
They roll up their sleeves. It's Friday night. They, you know, get a beer out of the fridge. Their buddies come over. Hey, let's put on these carbs. And then they run into something and they're like, well, now what do I do? Well, yeah. You could wait till Monday morning, or you could go to our website, and the answer is probably there.
Right.
So we spend a lot of time on that, and there's a lot younger guy in a lot of those videos, man. You know, I was a lot younger then. I think we need to refresh some of those videos now.
Yeah. Well, listen, you stay young forever on the internet.
Yeah. But the info's there for that guy who's got a question on Saturday morning, or you know, or.
Well, and I think that's also a testament to your commitment to trying to do what you can to help people out, to thinking about if you were on the other end of that, any information that doesn't really cost you anything to just give out there to help people do some things, to get some things figured out, it's beneficial and it's helpful. Now, with respect to the Cadrons versus like a set of dual 40s, the basic differences between the two is the single barrel carburetor versus a dual barrel carburetor. It's a much bigger diameter of a carburetor, obviously, because it's 1 versus 2, right?
Well, you'll pull air through one cylinder at a time, right?
Right. So
is it big?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, some of the benefits, in your opinion, that make the Kadron more like user friendly and those types of things for somebody that's saying, hey man, I want a little street performance, and I'm thinking about dropping $1,000 on a set of, 44 IDFs, and you're like, right, you might get the same. And what's a guy going to spend for a set? They call up Kaddie Shack and say, hey, I'm going to buy I just want to buy a set of carbs that you guys have gone through that like, they might be new or rebuilt, but it's like, send me the package for my 1776 street motor.
1776, I have to look it up, but you're probably going to spend a minimum of $1,060.
And that's going to be dialed in, all the tricks done to them, everything ready to go, bolt on.
With the high flow kit and all the little things. I have $1,100 maybe. I don't know. We have a little thing on our website that you can go through and click the boxes. Mm-hmm. Like if you go on Apple's website, you can build a computer. You can build your carburetors. I want these air cleaners, and I want this linkage, and I want, this off-road thing, or I want, velocity stacks, or or fuel line kits. And dude, if I thought like 20 years ago or 30 years ago that we'd be selling $1,000 sets of carburetors, I'd be like, you're on crack.
Right.
These are Cadrons, man.
Right.
But I mean, the benefit is that they run, and I've had Webers, and I'm not a Weber guy. You go to the Baja Bug, they're on the Baja right now. They won't be next engine, but I've had the heat gun deal under my seat and find out which cylinder's not firing, go clean the idle jets, all the linkage slips, and I've done all that, and there's a time and a place for that, and that's great. If you want to be the cool guy, and we're not cool. We're just. I drive a 75 still. I'm not one of the cool guys. We run my car. You've seen the darn thing. We drive it to the racetrack. We're in a pro eliminator class, like 19 cars in the class, and like we're the only one that drives it there. Everybody's on a trailer.
Let's talk about the drag car, because you have a drag car that runs Cadrons, right?
And that's what I'm talking. It's my car. It's my daily driver. It's a drag car because we put stickers on it.
So you drive that car to the grocery store?
Yeah. Go get donuts in that thing. Drive it to work. It's a fun car.
Give me the breakdown on that car. What's the motor displacement?
Well, we broke the crankshaft in half after 8 years of the other motor. The other motor had 8 years on it, and I'm not kidding. We checked the valves every year, and we changed the oil and did all that stuff. I did 2 valve adjustments in that car in 8 years.
And raced it. And we put hundreds of passes on that car. And what was the best time in that car?
On a quarter mile, we did 1295 at 101.
1295. What's the compression ratio?
That motor was 10-1.
10-1. And
right.
What's the cam? So is this top secret stuff, or what's the camshaft in it and the heads?
I did the heads myself. They were 42, 37.5, AA 500 castings. It had Norris springs and retainers and all cool valve stuff in it from old Norris when they were in business. 408S cam and 125 rockers.
Wow.
And the 08S was a Norris cam also.
And that motor, you beat the crap out of that motor, daily drove it, and just drive it to the bug-in, race it. And I mean,
right.
12.9. And what class you're running? You're running in
Pro.
What was that again?
Pro Eliminator.
Pro Eliminator, which is that's a bracket class?
It's a bracket class for all the pro cars that don't fit in another class. So
when we say it's a bracket class, it's a dial-in time, and you race against cars that run different, but it's all about consistency.
Right. And we have to run on the 8th mile. We had to run 850 or faster to qualify for the class.
Oh, wow.
And that's pretty quick.
And that car runs 850 in the 8th?
Yeah. So the very first race, we were at we did 2 qualifying passes. We had one more class, and they're tapping their feet. They're saying like, "Hey, dude, you're not going to qualify." And we're at 856 or 858 or something like that. So I'm like, take the belt off.
So what'd you do?
We were at 5 or something, and we qualified. And then, we've actually won the whole. I don't know if you know that or not, but we've won the whole Triple Crown series in that class.
Really?
In fact, last year we tied for first place with Scott, and he only won first place. We would have won last year too, but he only won first place because we had the same amount of points, but he had beat us head to head earlier in the year, and we were winning the race, and where our throttle cable slipped, and that very last race, and we got eliminated. So,
and this is on an 8-year-old motor, you're saying?
Yes, most of that. That race was the first time because we broke the crankshaft home, the February or whatever, March motor, we won that race, the whole thing with all the cars and everything. We came first place. Then Miguel got on the freeway and got one exit down, and the crankshaft broke in half on the freeway on the way home.
That's crazy.
So we built a 2180 because we figured I had parts for a 2180.
Right.
You've heard of a slats motor, right?
A what motor?
A slats motor.
Uh-uh.
It's shit laying around the shop.
Oh, okay. I have
So
now.
right. Well, yeah, we built a slats motor. Basically, it was a 2180 that we had parts for. That we were going to build another thing for a bus or whatever, and we put that in and finished the season out with that. And that's what's in the car now. We just ended up leaving it in the car. So we went smaller with it, less compression, and then still made we're still under the time. So
Really?
it's still right. Yeah. So it's a 2180 now.
So you're down 200 cc's or 120 cc's, and
Less compression, smaller heads, smaller modifications to the carburetors, and we're still right there in that same time.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And those carbs now, and those carbs, no flat spots, run all day, stay in tune. You're not doing crazy linkage adjustments and all that stuff. Is that the reason why you like the Cadron so much, is because like you can
for the average guy. I mean, that's what really makes, yeah, we like working on our cars when we want to work on our cars, but it's not fun working on your car in a 7-Eleven parking lot.
Yeah. And this, it's like, it's funny because the linkage on them is like so archaic, but works so good.
Well, the linkage that is the ball and socket linkage that MP makes for them, and that is basically a copy of the linkage that Kadron made for them years ago.
Right.
It's kind of goofy at best.
Yeah.
We had to come up with a solution for that. So the hind joint linkage is a lot better. The balls don't pop off, so you don't have a linkage problem on the side of the freeway when you're running on 2 cylinders. Everything's just it's just better.
So you guys make upgraded linkage setups for it. Like you guys do the whole thing. Like you said, they can go on your website and like say, okay, I'm going down the road of the Cadrons and I'm going to do this, and this.
Right.
No.
And you go really nuts. And sometimes, we look at each other, we just go, like, who would buy this? Like, yeah, like $1,800 set of Cadrons, and okay, well, you've got every single thing. I make a hardline kit. I bet, because, in the racing and the drag racing, you have to have metal fuel lines or braided fuel lines. So, the guys in the tech, sometimes they'd like, they wink at you like, hey, we'll let you through, back in the early days.
Right.
But you fix this, Jeff, we can. So Miguel came home with this weird octopus looking stainless steel braided weird thing. And I'm like, you don't put that on your car. What the hell is that? So then we bought benders, and then we started, I'm like, all right. So we bought a bunch of sticks of stainless steel, and we figured out all the fittings and we have a stainless steel hard fuel line kit now. So I've bent, I don't know, a couple hundred of those myself. And then finally we just like, hey, Jeff, let's get smart about this and send one sample out to somebody that has a CNC machine that can make all the bends for you.
Right.
And, we can put all the rest of it together. So yeah, we had the stainless hardline kits because it went on Miguel's car. And then we took it to Sacramento, and then, oh man, I want one of those. Oh, I want one of these. Okay. So it just kind of evolved from there. And then we have, regulator kits and things. And I don't know. We have all the right stuff for all the wrong stuff.
Right. And when you say wrong stuff, you mean like the carburetor that everybody looks down on.
Exactly. And my 75 car, nobody wants a 75, right? Dude, I could take the engine out of my car with carburetors on it.
Because the no side trace.
Right.
Yeah. It's just drop in, drop out.
Yeah. It's the best car in the world. And mine is a really rare 75. I didn't know when I bought it, but it's a model you don't see anywhere. It's called a Model 110 if you ever want to look that up.
It's the Super Beetle Model 110?
No, it's a standard bug.
Oh, really?
It's a model, and it has no fresh air, no
insulation. Not the 110 that had 110 horsepower?
No. It's a racing model. It had no fresh air system. There's no vents in the hood or any of that. There's no, like, all those things that stick the headliner to the sides of it. Those little teeth that come out in the door jams and on the firewall in the back. There was no insulation in the car. The headliner doesn't go down the door jambs. It's like an oval window headliner.
Right, like a standard headliner.
It's just a weird car. It's a 1 year only USA import weird
car.
Oh,
so it's like a standard. It's a standard. Yeah, like no vinyl on the door panels.
No little moon on the side, behind the rear window.
Yeah.
Little plastic moon. There's no moon there. It's
no carpet, just felt inside the car on the door and stuff.
Yeah, it had all black trim originally, and black mirrors and black headlight rings.
Yeah, I have a 2003 Mexican Beetle that's pretty similar to standard Mexican. And I like it because it doesn't have any trim on it. There's no chrome, there's no molding on it because it was a standard Beetle. So those were things it didn't get,
Yeah.
No, that's
trippy.
Cool. Man, there's so much. I mean, but in a nutshell, really, I mean, the pros and cons versus like a set of Cadrons versus a set of Webers, right? If you're a beginner and you want performance and you don't want to be a tinkerer, you don't get off on like adjusting your linkage every, couple of weeks and things running out. When the motor warms up, it runs, it idles high and all that kind of stuff. If you want something that's bulletproof, in your opinion, the Cadrons are bulletproof, reliable. You can get just as much performance out of them, and it's something that you just kind of set it and forget it and just drive the crap out of it.
You said it. I mean, that's.
No, I think that's awesome, man. It's one of the things. One of my first double cabs that I had years back that I used to daily drive at work had a 1914 with a dual set of Cadrons on there, and I'm not a tinkerer. Once it's running good, I close the deck lid, and I'm lucky to check the oil. You know what I mean? Like I'm that guy because I just want to drive, especially if it's my daily type thing. And I tell you, man, I just that other than like you said, the linkage would pop off every now and again, and nothing the little baling wire can't fix. But it's definitely something that when I've got a set of Cadrons on my limo bus right now because it's got a new Brazilian motor in it that my buddy put in before he passed away, and he put a set of Cadrons on there and stuff. I mean, it's two pumps and it starts. You know what I mean? Like it just boom runs. Not a lot of. I don't have a idle jet clogged all the time. I don't got it's an archaic carburetor, and they're pretty bulletproof.
When they're dialed in, man, they really work, and they work for years and years and years. And I've had guys in Canada, no lie, I've got guys in Canada that herd cattle with them.
Really?
In the snow, I mean, so don't they need chokes? No, they just run. Okay, you're gonna have to. It's it's 30 degrees outside. I'm a little slow getting out of bed in the morning, but once I'm warmed up, I'm good for the day. Yeah. They run in Hawaii, they run in Canada, they run in Alaska, they just run.
Man, that's pretty awesome. I mean, there's so much to these carburetors and just that. But what's great is, through tuning these carburetors and messing with these throwaway carbs that people didn't have a lot of respect for, you're kind of one of the few guys out there that's pioneering, like, let's get these carbs, let's make carbs cheap again and get them to these guys. And, you know what I mean? Like doing your part to kind of help out the guy that doesn't have a ton, but wants his cake and eats it too, from the performance standpoint. Now, didn't they have a Kadron class at one time in the drag racing scene?
Yes, they did. And
what was the story behind that?
Was involved in that. It was before my day. Like professional day, I guess, and they did. Those run. You've seen Joel's car. The thing does wheelie crazy.
Yeah, he bought the red Puma that he races now is my old Puma.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that Puma again coming around, right? But yeah, you can really do. And at some point, maybe we'll get into that part to see how far we can go with that. But we got a buddy, Mikey, who's got the ugliest Volkswagen in the entire world, other than Miguel's. I think they're tied. Right. Miguel's $5 bad too. But we got, dude, I think we got 186 horsepower out of that thing.
Really?
Yeah.
And what size the motor?
He's got a 2332 in that, and I think he's running 11.3-1, but he street drives that thing also.
Really? That's crazy. Now, have you
beat me in my car? He beat our 2180. He's the best time that, and we all had 10 years in the building that motor together on Friday nights.
Yeah, and have you noticed that with these carburetors, because they're like so sloppy, yet you can tune them in so good? Have you found that they're not as sensitive to compression ratio changes as the other carburetors?
Well, I have a theory on that. I think realistically, what my opinion is, or whatever, when you're running IDAs and all the big stuff, you're allowing more air to get into the system. The more air that gets in there, the more it's going to compress the higher compression ratio you have. So when you're not allowing as much air in, to reach that same cylinder pressure, you can use a compression ratio that is effectively higher on paper, because you're not compressing as much. The volume of air is not as much. So let's say if you have a camshaft that you're running, like let's say an Engel 110, like, okay, people want to run 8.5-1, right?
Yeah.
On a 110, whatever. It's like, that's the number, or maybe they go 9-1 if they're, whatever. I'm going to say with Cadrons, you can run 10-1 in that. The engines that I'm building for our car, for the quote race car or whatever, are really street engines, and they're not meant to wind out at 7,200 RPM. My power band is done. My camshaft, my heads, and everything designed. My power band is done at this motor, especially at like $6,000, because I want it for longevity. I want it to be fast. I want it to be through the power band, be streetable, not have to rev the engine at the intersection to 3,000 RPM to keep it running. If we wanted to build a race car, which is more along the lines of what Mikey's doing, and we're helping, we're all experimenting with this stuff, then yeah, you can, run more compression and do different things in different camshafts. That's going to allow that compression, that extra compression, but you're going to give up something at the bottom end of that. And that's not what I want out of a daily driver, out of a street car.
Right.
I've got a 5 in that thing. I've got a Berg 5 in it. So I put down the freeway. Miguel takes that thing. He's taken it into San Diego and raced to the drag races and drove it back. I mean, it's not like we're just driving to Irwindale, 10 miles away. We get in the thing and go. If I want to come to Vegas, then I'll get in the car and go drive to Vegas in it.
Yeah.
You're not going to do that with the Red Baron, right?
No, that ain't happening. No, that's too cool, man. I think there's a lot of potential, and it's maybe something that's not talked about enough for some of those guys that want a little bit of performance. They don't have the money, but they want to put in the time and energy into it. I think it's definitely something that's out there, and that's an area that they can go in, which is why the reason I wanted to do the podcast with you. So open up some of those ideas, some of those people that are looking for, ways to build their own little bit of performance there.
Yeah, and have it reliable.
Yeah,
and that's the idea. I'm an old fat guy, dude. I don't want to be under that car every weekend.
Yeah, I hear you. You want to set it and forget, like the Ron code. Just set it and forget it, man. So
forget it.
Well, cool, man. Well, look, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and in the future, if you guys have anything coming up or anything like that, and you wanted to, give me a shout and kind of give me some insight on it. Definitely love to help you get the word out on whatever you guys are working on. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can reach out to you?
Probably the best way is on the email through the website, Caddyshack.com. My name is Jeff Lain, Jeff, JEFFLAIN @Caddyshack.com. You can call us also. I mean, there's two of us. We're kind of just, Miguel and I, we're not a big outfit, and I'm shipping boxes and cleaning toilets and building carburetors and whatever else needs to happen. Customers come in. I mean, we have a whole little store and stuff. So, we're a community neighborhood, old school just Volkswagen place, man. You don't have that in Arkansas. You don't have that in Alaska or wherever. I mean, we're blessed, man. We have a neat little place to be, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It's not work, man. It's fun.
No, listen, man, that's awesome. I think it's, it's refreshing to see that that it's still out there in the hobby. There's lots of people that are just out there enjoying what they're doing every day and getting to be a positive aspect to the VW scene, and I appreciate you for what you're putting out there, man. It's definitely something cool. And, it's, like I said, when I checked out your website, just how much free content you have on there for people. Some guy sitting in his garage, frustrated, he can get on there and probably get a lot of his stuff sorted just going through your instruction manuals on your website.
Yeah, definitely. And pick up the phone. We're there, man. It's just, there's two of us. So if there's somebody else in the store, it's what it is, but we'll always call you back. And we're just a couple of nice guys that like doing what we do.
No, I dig it, man. Well, Jeff, thanks so much, man, for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me on here. And, it's cool. It's really neat. It's special.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. And thanks for being a great part of the VW scene.
You got it, dude.
Right on. Well, if you like that podcast, and I'm sure you did, make sure you share it with a friend. Also, if you enjoyed it, 5-star review, Apple Podcast, give us a 5-star review. Don't forget to leave your name in the verbiage and you will get a shout out on Let's Talk Dubs. So appreciate you guys. Also, if you want to support, go pick up some merch. I have sweatshirts available on the podcast for chilly time of the year. So go check them out at letstalkdubs.com. Click on the store tab and pick up a sweatshirt today. Support your boy and get a shout out on the podcast. So appreciate you guys for supporting and look forward to getting back from my trip this weekend on Hot Rod Power Tour West. Keep an eye out on your Instagram and all that good stuff. See if you see me. If you see me, say hey. If you see a picture of me, tag me in it. Anyway, until next week, guys. Later.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen.